On a warm spring night in 1521, 3 Spanish caravels were making their way past the Canary Islands when the screaming started. The crews had just finished evening rations when something began climbing up the anchor chains. Within minutes, 5 sailors were dead, a dozen more wounded, and the ship's logs would record an encounter that the Spanish crown would spend the next century trying to suppress. This wasn't a pirate attack. This wasn't a storm. According to every surviving account, including sworn testimony given before royal magistrates, the Spanish sailors were attacked by creatures that came from the sea itself. If you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history that challenge popular narratives, consider hitting that like button and subscribing. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. The official records from this incident were sealed for nearly 300 years. When historians finally gained access to the archives in the early 19th century, they discovered something that changed everything we thought we knew about the age of exploration. The attack near the Canary Islands wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern that Spanish authorities had been desperately trying to hide. Let me take you back to what actually happened that night, because the truth is far stranger than any legend. The 3 ships were part of a supply convoy returning from the newly established colonies in the Caribbean. They'd taken the standard route, hugging the African coast before turning west toward the islands. The captain of the lead vessel, a man named Diego Velázquez de Mendoza, kept detailed logs. His entries from April 1521 are unnervingly specific. The first sign of trouble came just after sunset. The lookout reported seeing shapes in the water, moving parallel to the ships. Velázquez assumed they were dolphins or porpoises, common enough in those waters. But these shapes were different. They moved with purpose. Then the water around the ships began to glow. Sailors described it as a pale blue-green luminescence that seemed to emanate from the creatures themselves. Modern skeptics love to point out that bioluminescent plankton can create this effect, but here's what they conveniently ignore. The glow was concentrated around specific shapes. It moved with intention, and it grew brighter as darkness fell. What happened next is documented in sworn testimony from 43 surviving crew members, all questioned separately by royal officials. Their accounts match with disturbing consistency. The creatures began their assault around 10 o'clock. They came up the anchor chains first, using them like ladders. Sailors on night watch reported seeing pale figures emerging from the water, humanoid in shape, but moving in ways that human bodies cannot move. Their joints seemed to bend in multiple directions. They moved across the deck with a fluid, serpentine motion that terrified the men who witnessed it. The first sailor to confront one of these beings was a man named Pedro Cortés. His testimony is preserved in the Royal Archive in Seville. He described the creature as being roughly human in size, with skin that appeared smooth and pale in the moonlight. But when he struck at it with his boarding pike, the weapon seemed to slide off, as if the skin was coated in oil. The creature grabbed the pike, twisted it from his hands with impossible strength, and hurled it back at him with such force that it pierced through his leather jerkin and into his shoulder. More creatures came over the rails. The sailors fought back with whatever weapons they had, swords, pikes, even cooking implements. Some of the creatures fell. Others retreated back into the water, but for every one that fell or fled, 2 more seemed to take its place. Here's where the official narrative starts to fall apart, because Spanish authorities wanted to classify this as a native attack, some kind of raid by hostile indigenous people. But the Canary Islands had been under Spanish control for decades by this point. The native Guanche population had been largely subdued or assimilated. And even if they hadn't been, the Guanches didn't live in the water. They didn't attack ships at night. They didn't possess the kind of physical abilities these creatures demonstrated. The battle lasted approximately 2 hours. When it finally ended, the creatures simply withdrew, disappearing back into the ocean as suddenly as they had appeared. The Spanish crews took inventory. 5 men dead, 12 seriously wounded. But here's what's really interesting. When they examined the bodies of the creatures they'd managed to kill, they found something that royal officials would spend centuries trying to explain away. The corpses didn't look entirely human. Yes, they had human features. Arms, legs, a torso, a head. But the proportions were wrong. The fingers were longer, webbed between the digits. The skin, when examined closely, had a texture unlike human skin. It was covered in tiny scales, almost invisible individually but creating an overall pattern that gave the skin its unusual smoothness. The eyes, according to multiple accounts, were larger than human eyes and positioned slightly more to the sides of the head. Velázquez ordered the bodies thrown overboard. He was terrified that if word got out about what they'd encountered, his career would be finished. Spanish naval officers lived in constant fear of being accused of superstition or cowardice. But he kept detailed notes, hidden in his personal journal, that only came to light centuries later. The convoy made it to Grand Canary Island the next morning. Velázquez reported the attack to the colonial governor, who immediately sent word to Madrid. And this is where the cover-up began. The Spanish crown was in a delicate position in 1521. They were locked in competition with Portugal, England and France for control of the world's sea routes and colonies. Any suggestion that their ships were vulnerable to unknown threats could undermine confidence in Spanish naval supremacy. More importantly, the Catholic Church held enormous influence over Spanish policy, and church doctrine had very specific ideas about what kinds of creatures could and couldn't exist. They interviewed every surviving crew member. They examined the damaged ships. They even brought in academic experts from the University of Salamanca to provide scientific explanations. And then they classified everything. The official report, released to the public, described the incident as an attack by hostile natives using small boats. It claimed the darkness and the sailors' exhaustion had led to exaggeration and misidentification. The glowing water was explained as bioluminescent plankton. The unusual physical capabilities of the attackers were attributed to the effects of fear and confusion on eyewitness memory. But the classified portion of the report, locked away in the Royal Archives, told a completely different story. It acknowledged that the creatures did not match any known human population. It noted the physical anomalies observed in the corpses before they were disposed of. And it recommended that all future encounters with similar entities be documented, but kept strictly confidential to avoid public panic. What makes this even more compelling is that the 1521 attack wasn't unique. When researchers finally gained access to the sealed archives, they discovered dozens of similar reports spanning the entire age of exploration. Spanish ships encountered these creatures off the coast of Africa, in the Caribbean, near the Philippines, even in the Mediterranean. Each time, the reports were the same: humanoid figures emerging from the water, unusual physical capabilities, organized, deliberate attacks, and each time, the incidents were classified and suppressed. So what were these creatures? The popular explanation today is that sailors encountered manatees or dugongs and in their superstition and exhaustion mistook them for mermaids, but this explanation falls apart under scrutiny. Manatees don't attack ships. They don't climb anchor chains. They don't organize coordinated assaults. They don't kill trained sailors in hand-to-hand combat. Some researchers have suggested the sailors encountered communities of people who had adapted to living partly in the water. This theory has more merit. Throughout history, there have been cultures that developed remarkable abilities to dive and swim. The Bajau people of Southeast Asia, for example, have genetic adaptations that allow them to hold their breath for extraordinary periods. But even this doesn't fully explain what happened in 1521. The physical descriptions don't match any known human population. The abilities described go beyond even the most adapted human swimmers. There's another possibility that historians are only now beginning to seriously consider. What if the Spanish sailors encountered a population that wasn't entirely human, not in a supernatural sense, but in an evolutionary one? What if there was a branch of human evolution that adapted more completely to aquatic life? What if small populations of these people survived into the historical period, living in remote coastal areas, only occasionally encountering European explorers? This isn't as crazy as it sounds. We know that human evolution is far more complex than we once believed. We now know that modern humans interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans. We know that isolated populations can develop significant physical differences in relatively short evolutionary timeframes. We know that the ocean, particularly in the age of exploration, contained vast areas that European ships rarely visited. The Spanish weren't the only ones reporting these encounters. Portuguese sailors described similar beings off the coast of Angola. Dutch merchants reported attacks in the East Indies. Even English privateers who had every reason to mock Spanish superstition filed reports of strange aquatic humanoids in the Caribbean. The consistency of these reports across different cultures, different time periods, and different geographic regions suggests we're dealing with something more than just myth or misidentification. But here's what's truly fascinating. These encounters stopped, or more accurately, They were reported less and less frequently as the centuries progressed. By the mid-1700s, credible reports of aquatic humanoid attacks had virtually disappeared. Was this because European powers got better at suppressing the information? Or was it because these populations, whatever they were driven into extinction or deeper hiding by the expanding presence of human civilization? The Canary Islands incident of 1521 represents something crucial in our understanding of history. It shows us that the official narrative is often carefully constructed to protect power structures and established beliefs. The Spanish crown couldn't admit that their ships were vulnerable to unknown threats. The church couldn't acknowledge creatures that didn't fit into approved theology. So they buried the truth in classified archives and hoped it would be forgotten. But the truth has a way of resurfacing. Those sealed documents are now available to researchers. Modern analysis of historical accounts is revealing patterns that previous generations of historians dismissed as superstition. We're learning that the age of exploration was far stranger and more dangerous than our sanitized textbooks suggest. Think about what else might be hidden in those archives. How many other encounters were classified and forgotten? What other truths about our history have been deliberately suppressed because they challenged the established narrative? The Spanish colonial empire alone generated millions of documents, most of which have never been fully studied by modern historians. How many more incidents like the one from 1521 are waiting to be discovered? The attack near the Canary Islands matters because it forces us to question everything we think we know. It reminds us that history is written by those in power, and those in power have reasons to hide uncomfortable truths. It challenges us to look beyond the official narrative and seek out the primary sources, the eyewitness accounts, the documents that someone thought should be kept secret. Those Spanish sailors knew what they saw. They fought and bled and died against something that wasn't supposed to exist. Their testimony was taken, recorded, sealed away, and dismissed by generations of historians who couldn't reconcile it with their understanding of the world. But now we have access to those testimonies. We can read their words. We can compare their accounts with similar reports from around the globe. We can start to piece together a picture of the past that's far more complex than we imagined. The real question isn't whether mermaids exist in a supernatural sense. The question is what actually happened in 1521, and why was it so important to keep the truth hidden? What were those creatures? Where did they come from? Where did they go? And why has it taken us 500 years to even begin asking these questions seriously? The waters where this happened are still being fished and sailed. Modern technology could, in theory, explore these areas in ways the Spanish of 1521 never could. Underwater archaeology has made incredible discoveries in recent decades. Ancient shipwrecks, lost cities, entire ecosystems previously unknown to science. Is it possible that somewhere in those waters, in caves or deep trenches that satellites can't penetrate and fishing nets don't reach, something still survives? We may never know the complete truth about what attacked those Spanish ships in 1521. Too much time has passed, too many records have been lost or destroyed. Too many witnesses have taken their stories to the grave. But what we do know is enough to challenge the comfortable narratives we've been taught. History is not a settled account, it's an ongoing investigation. And the more we dig, the more we discover that the past is far stranger than we ever imagined. The Spanish crown wanted to bury this story. They wanted it forgotten, dismissed as sailors' superstition and the ravings of exhausted men. But those sailors didn't imagine 5 corpses on their deck. They didn't imagine the wounds that sent a dozen men home with scars they'd carry for the rest of their lives. They didn't imagine the terror of watching something climb out of the dark water and attack with intelligence and coordination that no animal possesses. They saw something real. They documented it as best they could, and for 500 years, their testimony has been waiting for someone to take it seriously. Now we finally are, and the implications are staggering. Because if the official narrative is wrong about this, what else is it wrong about? How many other truths are locked away in archives around the world, waiting for researchers willing to challenge conventional wisdom? The attack of 1521 near the Canary Islands is a reminder that the world is bigger and stranger than we allow ourselves to believe. It's a call to question, to investigate, to demand access to the records that powerful institutions would prefer to keep sealed. It's proof that history belongs not to those who write the official accounts, but to those brave enough to seek out what really happened. Those Spanish sailors deserve to have their story told. They deserve to be believed. And 500 years later, we finally have the means to give them that. The truth is out there, waiting in dusty archives and old ship's logs and sworn testimony that was filed away and forgotten. All we have to do is be brave enough to look for it.